and I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Heritage and Arts. And we'd like to welcome you today to this second COVID-19 cultural sector call. And we'd like to thank our partners in hosting this call, including the Division of Arts and Museums for the state of Utah, the Utah Cultural Alliance, the Utah Museums Association, Utah Humanities, and I think I've got them all, many local partners throughout the state. Before we get going today, I just want to address a couple of things. First, we want to tell you, we know how difficult this time is for your organizations. I was on a call this morning with the Governor's Economic Task Force, and I represented then that the cultural sector has been hit as hard as anyone. There's absolutely no way for you to earn revenue during this time. And so our goal is to try to connect you to resources so that you can keep your door open. We know that it's difficult. We've heard from many of you to understand why the mass gathering restrictions would be in place statewide when maybe COVID-19 is only hitting certain communities the hardest. But what we know from the governor and from national leaders is this is going to affect all of us, and we want to keep you all safe. And the more quickly we can address the restrictions that have been in place, the more quickly we can get through this. Finally, before we go on to our guest speakers, we want to remind you that the economic survey continues to be online at the Utah Cultural Alliance, and we'd like you to continue to update your information, and the most updated information is available to you. So to begin with today, we have asked J.C. Skinner, who is the General Counsel and Executive Vice President of the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce, to review with you the Governor's economic plan and some of the activities of the task force. We've asked J.C. to take 5 to 10 minutes on this, and so J.C., I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Jill. I'm actually going to post as I start to the chat room the Governor's Economic Plan. It's a plan they've entitled Utah Leads Together to address the various stages and the approaches that the state is planning in relation to the challenge that we're currently in. I'm also going to, hopefully you can all see my screen now. I'm also going to just share on my screen part of this plan so that we can walk through it together. And I'm going to ask Jill if you can just tell me, do I have the right screen up?
You do.
Okay,
You're good, J.C.
Thank you. The plan focuses, for those of you who have seen the plan, and I'm sure many of you have, so I don't want to be too repetitive, but the plan dissects our approach to the economic part as well as the health phase, and I should say most importantly the health phase, and secondarily the economic approach to the current crisis into 3 phases. The urgent phase, the stabilization phase, and then the recovery phase. And obviously we are currently in the urgent phase. The plan focuses on 3 primary goals, and I have them here. The first is to rigorously follow public health guidelines and measure transition rates, 2, stay engaged in the economy, and 3, to assist those in need. So what Jill's asked me to talk about primarily is this section of staying engaged in the economy. I'm happy to answer questions about any of the other sections as well, but particularly the stay engaged with the economy. Right now is obviously the most difficult part of this, and the urgent phase requires the most sacrifice from the most number of people, and I recognize that it requires significant sacrifice from some sectors much more than others, and your sector is definitely one of those. The restrictions on gathering sizes, on the distance from which people can be in proximity to one another, very, very much impact your ability to function in the kinds of activities that you do. And I recognize that that has been a significant hit. The purpose, I know you all understand this, is to try to slow the infection rate here in the state, to try to flatten the curve so that while we know that the virus will continue to spread, that it does so at a much more measured pace, and that we are able to avoid overwhelming our medical and hospital resources so that those who need medical care can actually get it. They characterize the economic phase here as you see. It's not great. We are trying to keep the economy open to the extent possible. None of the orders, with the exception of the Salt Lake County order, and actually I'm going to step back. So the governor issued this plan last week, the Utah Leads Together plan. Then I believe it's been such a whirlwind, Thursday or Friday, he issued a directive to the state that enhanced and expounded further on these orders. The next day we had Salt Lake City and then Salt Lake County. I shouldn't say those weren't necessarily day after day, but also issue orders. Summit County issued an order the day before the governor did, and then today we've also seen Wasatch County issue an order. So there are slightly different directions coming in different counties if you operate in more than one place. And again, happy to talk through any of those. But the goal of all of them has been to try to keep as many businesses operating as possible. And to the extent that you can operate safely and work from home, everyone is very much encouraged to do so. And we know that for many of you, your operations can continue, but you interact with the public in a very different way. And so necessarily limits what you can do. Again, the only county that has specifically closed down any businesses is Salt Lake, and those have been those person-to-person type businesses. So like beauty services or dental services, things like that, that necessitate physical contact is where those are. It includes industries large and small. It talks about the limits on food services and other kinds of things. But again, the impact is felt most severely by small businesses, nonprofits, retail institutions, event planning groups, the hospitality industry, the tourism industry seem to be those that are suffering most significantly. This is also accompanied with this most serious efforts related to our healthcare. But right now, the plan for all of us is, and I know you've all heard this at length, and let me find the right section here, but is to try to apply best practices to your workplace and to your business and to your operations in every way possible. So the general guidance is to telework whenever and wherever possible, to apply, if that's not possible, to apply guidelines, these general guidelines, which you've all seen. And the list here comes from our Utah Department of Health and the CDC as to how best operate with those restrictions in place. We also provide best practices for other industries, and you all have participated. We've also collected those best practices and put them on the website, the state website, to highlight what people are doing to stay open and to adapt. The kind of mantra here is to adapt, innovate, and overcome. And so this is, we're definitely in an adaptive phase right now. The next couple of phases will focus on stabilizing and then recovering. And during the stabilization phase, there still will be many restrictions in place. We'll be slowly easing back into our normal operations. But hopefully by following these same guidelines, we can adapt our workplaces to try to do that in a much, in a little bit more permissive kind of a way. But recognizing right now that even though the governor has put this in place as a voluntary order, it very much is focused on people complying with this. And in order for this to stay, to be effective, it requires people to participate and to engage. The last phase is the stabilization phase, and that is where we will be trying to, the recovery phase is where we'll be hopefully trying to stand people up again very quickly, but recognizing that for some sectors, and yours is again one of those, recovery is going to maybe take a little bit longer than a retail store that can just open its doors again, or a law firm where everyone can just come back to work. You have some very unique struggles that you'll have in that capacity. With that, Jill, I'm happy to take questions if that would be.
JC, I think we're going to hold the questions till
Okay.
the end, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So next we wanted to move on. Many of you, probably all of us have heard about the federal package that was approved this weekend by Congress. At the heart of that is SBA loans. What we know from the survey is many of you are hesitant to explore this option, but as we've learned more about this opportunity, we really think it could be a good tool for you to try to bridge some gaps. And with us today is Miles Hansen, who is the president and CEO of the World Trade Center. Miles, I'll turn the time over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jill, very much for the opportunity to engage with our nonprofit community. World Trade Center Utah, we're a nonprofit as well, and so we feel a lot of kinship to everybody on this call today. And Jill, we're grateful for all the work that you and Emily and the team are doing to help provide support to nonprofits at this time. And so, like Jill mentioned, at this point, we've all heard about the stimulus program. Let me address one thing Jill just said right up front. There may be some hesitation for many of you watching in today on participating in this program. I hope that if you take one thing away from what I have to say over the next few minutes is that you will engage 100% if you are eligible at availing yourselves and your organizations of these resources. They are specifically designed to help organizations like yours bridge this gap where we see significant pauses in our economy across the country. And so first, maybe I'll provide a little bit of big picture perspective on what all is included in the stimulus package and some of the policy objectives behind it. And then I'll spend a few minutes diving a little bit deeper on these SBA loans, of which 501c3s are eligible to apply and participate. So first, the big picture. So as we know, many aspects of our economy are on pause right now. We will likely see more of that coming over the next week or two as our healthcare professionals work aggressively, and all of us really, to control the spread of COVID-19 and to take care of those who are sick with it. It's interesting to note that the price tag on the stimulus package is it's more than $2 trillion. If you add this with the stimulus package that was passed about a week and a half ago, that accounts for just about 10% of the US GDP from last year. And so it's interesting to think that this is plugging in to about 10% of what our US economy produces in a year as a way to bridge the gap until we get to the other end of this COVID-19 challenge. The stimulus package is built around 5 pillars. The first is health. It includes $340 billion for hospitals, healthcare professionals, medical supplies, all the things that we needed to help keep people safe and healthy in our country. If you are a nonprofit that is involved at all with providing health, physical or mental health as well, there may be some opportunities for you, and we can do a little more digging on that front later. The second pillar of the package is on small businesses. I'll come to that one. The third is directed towards individuals and families. These are the direct payments that we've all heard about at this point, as well as significant increases to unemployment benefits. For those of you that unfortunately have had to lay people off, it's important to note that as part of the package, the federal government will increase by $600 per week the unemployment insurance that the workers, laid off workers, are receiving. That is on top of what they receive from the state. The package also extends these benefits for an additional several weeks, I believe 4 months total. And so that can be a significant resource that you can push out to your communities and your people who may be in need of that at this point. The fourth pillar is built around taxes. And I'm not going to go in much detail here because it's not as immediate, but just please note that when it comes time to file your 2020 taxes, there's some significant tax credits as well as opportunities to write off additional expenses that could help your companies. I know for nonprofits, obviously, you're not paying income tax, but it includes payroll taxes and other costs as well that could be beneficial for you. The fifth pillar is built around supporting large companies and corporations as well as large institutions. This includes $150 billion to be given in a block grant to the states based off of population. And so Utah has about 1% of the population, so we can expect to receive about $1.5 billion. And this is to be used by the states to help support those in need, and clearly nonprofits are included in that. And so that's something, Jill, for you and your team to be engaged in and to keep an eye out on. So now let's go back to that second pillar, the small business loan and grant programs. These are really built around two different programs, primary means to help small businesses, and nonprofits, or at least 501c3s, are eligible for these loans. And I know that a lot of nonprofits, maybe they haven't had an SBA approved loan before, and so that's why I want to kind of break this down, the process a little bit. So the first program I'll talk about is the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP Loan Program, as I've seen people referring to it. The way you calculate what you could receive from this program is you take a look at your payroll costs over the past 12 months. What's the average monthly payroll cost your organization has had for the past year? You come up with that average cost, payroll cost, you times it by 2.5, and that's what you are eligible to receive through the Paycheck Protection Program. What you do is you go to an SBA approved lender. You can talk to your bank right now. You can Google SBA approved lenders in Utah. You will find a list right there. Go down it. If you already have a banking relationship with an SBA approved lender, I highly recommend you reach out to your contact there immediately to begin this process as the program is being developed on a national scale. If you don't have a relationship with an SBA approved lender, all of the lenders on that list right now are working very aggressively to make sure that they can quickly handle the significant increase in requests and applications that they're going to be receiving. So again, I would recommend you pick one that is operating close to you or that you feel good about and reach out to them. Another resource for information can be through the SBA's Utah District Office. They have, if you go to their website, they've got a phone number, an email address, and we are working very hard to stand up a rapid response team to work behind the SBA so they can quickly respond to all the inquiries that they are receiving right now. So anyway, so to get the loan, you go through your bank, the SBA approved lender, you come prepared with the documentation to demonstrate what this 2.5 times your monthly average payroll cost would be. You submit the application. They are working to very quickly be able to provide that funding to the organizations. And now this part is key. From the time you receive your loan for the next 8 loan for what it's designed for, you will receive a grant to cover those costs. And that's very important. The other loan program that is separate, but it operates in parallel with the Paycheck Protection Loan is the Emergency Disaster Loan. And these loans are standard loans that have existed for a while, but the stimulus package significantly increases them, reduces the barrier to receive them, and it includes a $10,000 advance that small businesses will receive as soon as they submit an application. These loans require no personal guarantee or no collateral. They'll be fully backed by the government, and they will require, at this point, we've been told, no principal or interest payments for the first 6 months. And so they can be very attractive options. It is not yet clear which aspect of these will be forgiven, which makes the Paycheck Protection Loans very favorable if you can go ahead and jump in and get those, because we know right now that those first 8 weeks will be forgiven. But the $10,000 up front that you receive as soon as you apply for the Emergency Disaster Loan is significant, and it is an opportunity to get a quick injection of cash into your organization.
Miles?
Yes.
You cut out when you were first explaining that $10,000 with the application.
Oh, shoot.
Could you explain that one more time real quickly?
Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that.
And
So
Miles, could you turn your video off? I think you're cutting out for a lot of people, and that might help.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Hopefully the audio works. Somebody jump in if I break out again. So when you apply for the Emergency Disaster Loan, as soon as you submit your application, the way the program is set up is you will receive an immediate $10,000 advance for the loan. The nice thing about this advance is even if you are not approved for a loan, you get to keep the $10,000. And so I think I'll wrap it up there. And if there are questions at the end, happy to answer those. And Jill, if I cut out through any other parts in there that you want me to repeat, go ahead and let me know, and I will repeat those.
I think we got all but that one part, and so thank you for repeating it. And I'm going to turn the time over to Crystal to sort of lead the Q&A.
Sure, and I'm also going to leave my video off to help with the sound. Here's a question. We have 150 full-time employees, but during the past 12 months have hired extra substitute musicians, guest artists, choruses, etc. We had thought they were contractors, but from other orchestras, we were hearing those infrequent performers count towards the 5. Is this true?
Okay, you were cutting out there. I'm going to try to call in on my phone, but I picked up the gist of the question, which I believe is, do contractors count towards the 500 person headcount? The answer is yes. On that 500 person headcount, they are looking at full-time employees, part-time employees.
JC, are you still there? Miles, you're cutting out again.
I'm still here.
Miles, are you still there?
Miles is calling in with his cell phone. I think we should give.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
If ever hold tight for just a second.
And if we have more questions, they can go into the Q&A and we can start answering.
I can answer a couple of these questions that are coming in. Gary Christensen, you're saying, I'm trying to determine if payroll costs used to determine the 2.5 times of average monthly payroll costs also include payroll taxes, insurance, health benefits, etc., or is it limited to direct payroll costs only? The answer is yes. The 2.5 times is payroll, including those health benefits and insurance, mortgage and rent, and debt payments. When these payroll protection loans, you'll apply through a lender, a private lender, not through the SBA itself, and they will help you determine which of your operational expenses qualify. Miles, are you back?
I am back. I apologize about that. I just called in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. So I'll go back to this first question. We have 150 full-time employees, but during the past 12 months have hired extra substitute musicians, guest artists, etc. We thought they were contractors, but from other orchestras, we're hearing that those infrequent performers count towards the 500 employee maximum, thereby disqualifying them from the SBA payroll protection loans. Is this true?
That's my understanding. My understanding is that by employees have taken a very broad, made a very broad definition. So it's full-time, part-time, as well as contractors working with the organization. The one thing that could be helpful on this is that for organizations that have several different locations, and so the example I've seen are like chains of hotels, or if I owned, 15 McDonald's franchises, and my assumption is that the same would be true for nonprofits. If there are several different locations, then there may be a way to do the head count for each individual location, and in that manner get below that 500 person threshold. But if they're all in one location in one entity, then unfortunately, if you get above that 500 level, that entity may not qualify.
There are quite a few questions about kind of the differences between the disaster relief program, where that first $10,000 is purchase mode. Could you reiterate that one more time for everybody?
Yeah. So, and we're working, these programs, so the law was passed on Friday. Right now, the SBA is writing the rules for the program. And so everything I say, take it with a bit of a grain of salt until we have these rules in place, at which point we'll have more specifics on the distinctions between the programs. But a couple things off the top. One, with the Paycheck protection loans, you are limited to that 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. Whereas on the emergency disaster loans, you have, it is not as clearly defined the amount that you are able to loan. And so if you need more than just a 2.5 times your monthly payroll, then it may be worth taking a closer look at the emergency disaster loans. Additionally, with the emergency disaster loans, you do have, again, like we talked about, that $10,000 up front, which can be helpful for companies right off the bat. The downside of the emergency disaster loan is that you apply for that directly with the SBA, as opposed to going to an SBA approved lender. And just the reality is that the SBA is dealing with a tsunami of emails and phone calls and applications and requests. And so getting that processed has been a challenge for the SBA. Like I mentioned, the Paycheck protection loans right now, we know up front exactly what will be forgiven. And so it's a bit more of a clearly defined grant as long as you use the loan for what it's intended to be used for. Whereas with the emergency disaster loans, I think there's an expectation that most of these loans will be written off and forgiven. But at this point, we don't have that, written in law like we do with the Paycheck protection loans.
Can you guys hear me? My internet cut out for a second.
We can, Crystal.
Okay, great. The next question is, could you define what definitions are included in that calculating payroll costs for the 2.5 times average monthly payroll?
Yeah, so we're working to get more clarity on that. As I understand it at this point, the payroll costs include compensation, which includes the cost of benefits, paid to employees and contractors, but it's capped at $100,000 per year per individual. And so that means that if you've got somebody on your team that you're paying, say, $120,000 with the cost of benefits, you would only be able to receive a loan up to that first $100,000 for that individual. Payroll costs also include state and local payroll taxes.
Crystal, it looks like we have time maybe for one more question.
There's quite a few questions about the $10,000 advance from the disaster relief program. Are there any specific?
Crystal, you're cutting out.
So Joe, I'll jump in. So it sounds like lots of questions about that $10,000 advance with the emergency disaster loan program. That's one that we don't have a whole lot of clarity on yet in terms of exactly how they plan to process that and how immediate it actually will be. But it is the way that it's written into the law, and that the intent is so that anybody that applies for the emergency disaster loan, you submit the application, and there may be several days before that application is approved and before a company would receive money. What they've designed on this is, if it works correctly, as soon as you submit that application, You don't have to wait to be approved to get funding, but you'll immediately receive this $10,000 advance. That would be taken out of the total value of the loan that you're requesting, but it is a grant in the sense that companies won't have to pay that portion back. And even if you are denied, your application is denied, you would not have to return the $10,000 back to the SBA. For anybody who applies, they get that 10 grand and they can keep it.
Thank you, Miles. I think we're going to have to wrap this up, but what we want to tell everyone is all of the questions that you have posted in the chat, we will answer. And if you have additional questions, you can email us at Arts and Museums or at the Utah Cultural Alliance. But anything that's been posted in the chat will get to you with the answers to the entire group. And we will post a recording along with the answers for you. We want to thank Miles and JC for being on this call, and we really appreciate your partnership in helping the nonprofit community. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of our partners that sponsored this call. We'll be in touch with everyone throughout the week as we become aware of resources and specifics and guidelines. We'll continue to share with you information as we have it. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.